My name is Mario Casas. I retired from the Irvine Police Department after 25 years, 2 years ago. Prior to that, I had 6 years working for a specialized agency in Los Angeles at the RTD Police Department. It was called back in the day. So I had 31 years total before I retired. I currently run a training company called Universal Training Concepts and contract with 3SI Security Systems, which some of you may be familiar with because we provide the trackers for baiting property in your agencies.
I'm Lindsey. I'm the Mental Health Liaison Officer for the City of Irvine. I've been an officer of Irvine for 9 years and wear a variety of hats for our department. I've been on crisis negotiations, peer support, TLO, and I also have prior experience as an emergency dispatcher, and I started my career as an explorer, so talk about succession planning.
I'm Deputy Laurel Yoshimoto with Orange County Sheriff's Department. I have 3.5 years on, and I love it.
I'm Corporal Oscar Lizardi with the Santa Ana Police Department. I have a little bit over 18 years on the job. Lateral to the Santa Ana Police Department, 98, started with the Riverside Police Department.
I'm Benny Green. I'm Corporal for UC Irvine Police Department. I've been here approximately 11 years. Wear multiple hats. Currently, I'm FTO training also. I do the diversity training for our department, SRT member, and a myriad of other things. So I'm glad to be here.
First question, how does racial profiling or bias-based policing impact law enforcement, and how do you deal with community concerns in this issue? Or I guess in the past tense, Mario, how did you deal?
You know, I'm in a very unique situation right now because I don't have a boss in the audience. I'm actually been retired from Irvine for 2 years now, and I know as management squirms in their seats right now, I go, oh my God, what's Mario going to say? I will keep it very to point because there's been a lot of good comments made on this issue. And quite frankly, the unfortunate reality of the situation is the perceptions that some of our communities have of police officers. And a lot of that has been exacerbated by the media coverage. Unfortunately, they like to promote the negativity of police work and not enough of the positive work that police work does. And that's just the unfortunate reality of the situation. So, and we're not very good at blowing our own whistles. We're really not. I'm currently chairing the advisory committee for the Post Peace Officer Standards and Training Committee, and I work closely with the commission. And one of our goals at Post is to try to find a way for us to blow our own whistle and show the general public nationwide, and more importantly in California, that we're doing the job that's expected as far as interacting with the community in a positive way. Racial profiling, I'd like to say, I like to believe is a small percentage of people who do this. I think the vast majority of officers do a phenomenal job, and we need to promote that more and find a way to promote that more, both in the media and within our own, within the police departments. Now being a community member myself in Lake Forest, I see that. The sheriff's department does a phenomenal job in servicing the community of Lake Forest, and as they do in any other community. It's just not publicized enough. And unfortunately, the negativity has put this perception on law enforcement that I don't believe is really true. So we do have to find a way to make it better.
Well, thanks for that setup there, Mario. So diversity training and cultural change to me were kind of a no-brainer, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think Irvine is very unique in that we are very culturally diverse. So this is the first agency I was sworn in, but I worked as an emergency dispatcher in St. Gabriel. So I'm familiar with the two different dichotomies. One where you have a community that is very largely based on one ethnic background versus one that is very culturally diverse. And we have a numerous amount of opportunities to make and bridge those gaps. And luckily, Irvine does support community-based policing, and they really put their money where their mouth is, for lack of a better term. I'm unique in that I pretty much am a social worker with a badge and a gun. I'm a mental health liaison officer, and so I really go out and try and bring resources to people that are in need and provide supportive services to family, which oftentimes I feel like I'm selling used vacuum cleaners. So it can be challenging to bridge some of those gaps in the beginning because there is a lot of sensitivity, and a lot of that is fed by media, but I think there are a lot of things already strategically in place, long-standing from our department certainly, that help bridge those gaps. And it is having those conversations and getting out and meeting your community on a different level, not necessarily just for that call for service. But I caution law enforcement agencies when you look at that, because that Nordstrom level of service, while I embrace it wholeheartedly, I think it's what we should be doing, it's time consuming. And you have to look at how you're gauging your productivity of your officers much differently, because you can't necessarily rely on statistics of what that officer's been doing in terms of reports or tickets, or because you're looking at a different realm. So your community-based policing officers are really focusing on making those relationships. It's much harder to gauge their level of productivity. So those are probably things we want to look at as organizations, and how do we still help hold those officers up where that is their strong point, because it definitely is something that can be easily overlooked, and that's what we really want to publicize and get the information out of there, because those relationships are invaluable.
One of the things I love about my job is that we have a lot of culture in Orange County. We are a big, diverse community. For example, I'm a white woman with a Japanese last name and I speak Spanish. And I'm pretty normal, you know, in our communities. How many people do we have that come from these rich diversities? And we are a young department. And part of what my generation has grown up with is the joy of learning about our neighbors. And the reason I speak Spanish isn't because I grew up in a family that spoke Spanish. It's because I worked with people who spoke it, and they were really cool, and I wanted to learn about them. I wanted to be like them. And so part of, as a young department, as new people on this job, as a new generation coming through, you know, I look to my 960s, I look to my partners, hey, and so when I'm dealing with someone who's a different race, it's not the race I'm looking at, because we don't racially profile. We are not allowed to. Man, that's a bad day, and that's the end of your job right there if you do that in my department. But there are language barriers, there are cultural differences, there are things I don't understand, and so there's times I call my lesbian partner, hey, I don't understand this reference she just made, what was she talking about, so next time I can do a better job. Hey, I don't speak Farsi, but I know this guy does. Hey, I'm not from Egypt, I don't understand what this guy's, where he's coming from, but I can ask my partner over here who's Egyptian, and he'll help me out. It's our vast richness as a department, and the people that we have in our diversity in our department that helps us not racially profile. And yes, we all do have biases. I happen to think that Japanese men are very handsome. I'm biased, you know. But so I married one. But so we definitely, all of us do have biases, but they're not necessarily bad biases. And then if they are bad, if there is a cultural something, man, my partner, if she or he sees me doing something I shouldn't, they're just smack me up the head so hard and say, hey, Yosh, you don't do that, you know. Really? Is that what you think about Asians? Well, I'm Asian, and I'm like, oh, no, you're right, you're not like that. And so on my level, we keep each other accountable pretty closely. If there is anything we don't understand, or say, hey, you know, in that culture, like, the reason they don't want to make eye contact with you is because it's rude. Oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, why didn't you look into my eyes? Oh, they were trying to be polite. Oh, I'm sorry. And then we go from there and we learn. And so the issue of racial profiling in where I work right now, it's not an issue, it's more how can we learn to deal with the different cultures? What do I not know that I can go on and learn so that I can serve better, and so I can answer that call better, so I can understand what's happening in this situation. Because the culture and the language and where our people come from do inform the situations we encounter as we go and serve.
Okay, with the topic, obviously, racial profiling, I want to just note the fact that Commander LeBron, I listened to you speak, and I was very much in line with what you had to say. Having worked the assignment for over 18 years, worked a variety of assignments, but the majority being on the street level, been on SWAT for almost 15 years, and done a lot of suppression, proactive type work. I've worked hand in hand with many of the officers there at the front line, dealing with first response incidents, but also with the community hand in hand. I will tell you that for the most part, it comes down to the generations. I've heard you, Tommy, mention your incident from but back in the day, and I do agree that it is a generational thing. We're in the millennial generation. I happen to come from Generation X, if you will. So therefore, you see that, and I do agree, this is already something that started from early on. I personally can tell you in over 18 years, I've never experienced anything like that, or any of my partners or any of my colleagues whom I've worked with. And like I said, I've worked a very aggressive unit. I will tell you, it is a difficult topic to talk about because of the fact that it's more of a perception. And I do agree with Lieutenant Park when he mentions that getting the communities involved, and kind of touches into the community policing. But the more the community is educated, the more that they're aware of what we do, and invite them, not just on the patrol level, because we could only do so much, but from our supervisors, from our management, from our executives, to really reinforce that, because all we hear is the negatives, but really invite them to bring out and let the community see what it is that we do, and let them watch us perform, not just the aftermath, because the reality is that we are out there doing a very good job. Unfortunately, it's the perception.
Yeah, I think here at UC Irvine, it's a little bit, we have a unique perspective or a unique environment due to all the different entities and types of races and religions, all types of people that we have on campus that we deal with. So I think as a department, we do an excellent job in the sense of what we do is when we get academy graduates and we have laterals, we put them through a training program prior to even hitting the actually FTO program. It's about a 2-week deal. And it's going to cover everything from, diversity, which is what I do, that's my role in it, to firearms, to I'm sure what others do as well. It could be how to deal with different assaults, things of that nature. But one of the things, like I said, I do is the diversity part of it. And what we do is we try to let the people, the new recruits, I said, and new academy graduates and the actual laterals know that this environment is different. You're going to have different religious factions, you're going to have different gender issues, all kinds of things, everything. This is a small city. So whatever you're going to have out in municipalities, you're going to have here. And so also you're dealing with young minds, a lot of times, and impressionable minds. And I think that's part of our job, to go out there and to try to put our best foot forward. So what we do is try to teach them to do the same thing and keep that, I think what I'd like to say, a newfound tradition of going in that right direction. Secondly, what we do is also we reach out into what we have here, many of you may not know, it's called a cross-cultural center. And what that is we're a group of, a lot of these groups, these different organizations, they gather, and that's like, if you will, for lack of a better term, a safe haven for them where they can express themselves. What we do is we try to go over there, and that's something I deal with as well, and try to get actually I'm the liaison for our department, but we try to get a dialogue, and we develop a relationship with them that has not been the best in the past. And when we go over there, we sit down on panels, we do things like this. And I think by doing these things, that's what's going to help to achieve and create a better atmosphere for all of us involved on this campus.
And we'll start with you and come back this way. Most of you covered the community policing question, but would anybody like to cover it in more detail than you have based on what the chiefs? And I'm going to give you a minute to do that because we're running short of time. So,
okay, really quickly, what we do is we also obviously we have we do the community art policing, and we also do zone policing. And so as you rotate, what we do is we rotate every 6 months, and as you rotate, you stay with the zone, and then you get to know your zone captains. We have zone captains, building captains, things like that. You get to know these people. So if you worked in a municipality, that would be somewhere like where you know shopkeepers and things of that nature. Well, by being on campus, we have things like, I don't know, it could be the social science areas, it could be the history department, it could be athletics, but you get to know those people and their problems, whether it could be anything from speeding, from issues that they're having with graffiti, vandalism, whatever the issue is, so that way you can go out there and once you know these people and you build those relationships with them, they can trust you, and it also goes back into the building up with our community organizations as well. So things like that is what I think is important for what we try to do here at UCF.
Yes, with community policing, I think it's several of the chiefs, I know Chief Ahan mentioned it, and some of the other executive members of the panel. This becomes more of a cultural thing within the organization. I believe you get it in the academy, but then you also want to continuously instill on it. I know here in the Irvine management and command staff talking about the fact that whether you're going to the first type of assignment after patrol, whether it be a street level unit, detectives, gangs, narcotics, wherever, what we do at the Santa Ana Police Department is that we provide, or we ask of that during the testing process as well. So we implement community policing in all aspects so that it's not something that's new, it's not something that has just developed because either the management or somebody has come down upon us. It's something that's been instilled from the academy all the way on, and having that understanding. And the big difference is, what I just recently noticed in some of our officers, when I personally have asked them what their thoughts of it is, they refer to it more as just showing that professionalism. And I looked at them and I said, that should be every day. You know, that's a professionalism's every day. But to really have that long-term solution aspect and approach on finding whatever the issue is, but the long-term solution.
One thing I have to say is that I absolutely do agree with everything that the men from my organization have gone before me. We really are doing all that stuff. That really is the culture in our department. A couple more things is that, for example, with different crimes, like say prostitution, which used to be seen as, oh, it's a big crime. It is a big crime, it is a big issue. But now we see that as a human trafficking issue. And those women are victims, and a lot of them got thrown into that at the age of 12, or maybe their moms put them out there on the street. Or we start looking at crimes not just as crime, but what's behind that. And so instead of running to react to the crime, we are trying to run ahead and be proactive in our crime solving. So one of my ancillary duties that I really enjoy doing is I'm a drug liaison officer. And so instead of, hey, I'm going to arrest this kid, you know, if you read the task force on 21st Century Policing, it talked about how a lot of juvenile crimes lead them and start getting them in the justice system as criminals really young. So part of what I do is I go and I educate the families and I educate youth about what are current drug trends, and let's talk about marijuana, and let's talk about what that looks like. And parents, here's how you can find it. Here's how you can be a better parent. And so the other thing too is we have things like homeless liaison officers. Every single city, we have someone who goes out there. They know the homeless people. They talk to them. They bring them gift cards because they're hungry, and sometimes sunscreen or socks. And that's just the different side of things that we're doing as a department.
Community-oriented policing, I think, it's a common sensible for the benefits to the community, and I think there's a positive side that sometimes goes without any recognition, and that's probably the positive effects that it has on the police officers who are actually doing it. So if you have enforcement teams and most of their contacts are negative, you look at your average, say, traffic officer, they're going to write ticket after ticket. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. We joke that you kind of have to get rid of your heart before you do that position. So you put them into a position where they're doing community-oriented policing, and I think you see the light return back to their eyes, you see the edges soften, and you see a much different personality come back out of that officer, because now they're getting positive contacts with the community, and I think that really does help shape us as officers as well.
Beat your time.
Got it down.
You know, well, Lindsey, I want to dovetail what Lindsey said. There is a portion of negativity to this job, unfortunately. But that can really be balanced by the officer's attitude in delivering that negative contact in the sense of, let's say, a citation. There used to be an old adage that I was trained up and said, you got to sell your tickets and make sure that they're okay with it and they understand that the reason you're doing this is because. So that can be dealt with. I think training plays a major part in a lot of the issues we're talking about. Continual, consistent training so that we can change the mindset of that delivery when an officer has to have a negative contact with a public member. The ambassador idea that came up in the last two panels is a great idea. I don't think that's a big enough program with most agencies, and I think a lot of that is attributed to the budgetary restraints, lack of personnel, things of that nature, but it truly works. I take that all the way back in the years to when LAPD used to have a quick beat, and they may still have some of that, where the officers get to know not only the business community, but the residential community. And it worked great. And we need to kind of take from that and rebuild it again so it works. We don't use enough of our reservists, for example, with all the institutional knowledge going out the door to do that kind of work because of the budgetary restraints.
We've talked about relationships, we've talked about family, we've talked about partnerships. And I think, and in law enforcement, we're moving toward that now. I see that in more ways than ever. You take Chief Campbell and Chief Solano. Those two went to high school together, grew up together, and they're both chiefs together. To me, that's where we're going. And then in the Hamill family, you have a sergeant and a chief. And I commend both of them because they're both in the business. They both promote the family values that this panel and the other panels both stated. And I want to thank you for it. Last question. Organizational succession planning. Martin?
I can't tell you how important this is. You've heard a lot about officers retiring out on these retirement programs, good incentives. And unfortunately, it's depleted the rank and file tremendously. But I think the only way to approach this is, and it's already been mentioned, is to nurture our students in the high school level, intermediate and high school levels, to look at this profession as an option for them to work very closely with the communities and have a positive impact. I mean, at Irvine, and I speak to Irvine because that's where most of my career was done, we used to have a high school program in place where the students would take this daily course in criminal justice. And the teacher of the high school was a reservist for Irvine PD. And it was great for nurturing that kind of interest in the profession to the point where they would automatically come into the Explorer program and then become cadets and then subsequently become police officers. We need to get that back. At Post, we're trying to support agencies statewide with that kind of effort. But we too, at the Post level, have budgetary restraints and lack of personnel to really focus on it. So it's kind of at a standstill right now. It's been shelved. But it is a big problem right now. Recruitment is a big problem for both full-time officers and reservists. But it's something we need to overcome as quickly as possible.
Succession planning, I think, is just good business sense. If you look at any of your Fortune 500 companies, you look at any business that is doing well and thriving and they have good retention, it's going to be those businesses that are really picking up on the key points of each employee and their strengths and really maximizing those and allowing them to grow in areas that they want to grow and being able to give them what they need to get to the destination that they'd like to be at. And I think it's no different in law enforcement. I think that's also a cultural shift that has kind of taken place. Some agencies are better at it than others, but I certainly I've worked for 3 departments, and I can say I've worked for an agency prior that really always looked outside for any type of promotional or any type of new replacement position. And it's just not good business planning. If you're grooming your employees and you're putting this much money in just to get a badge and a gun on somebody's hip, then certainly the retention of that and building them to what you need them to be and what they want to be just makes the most sense for any organization. So I think most agencies have kind of recognized that, and mentoring has come a long way. Irvine has a bunch of different mentoring programs that I think are extremely valuable, and I think when you're mentoring somebody, you're giving them a confidence and a skill that they may not have recognized they had before, and hopefully you're giving them some insight into where they can go from where they're currently at and prevent some of that stagnation.
One of the things you talk about is the problem of succession, but the problem is really just opportunity flipped on its side. And in our organization, we are very young, and I do only have 3.5 years on, and I have to kind of give Lieutenant Park a little bit of hard time because I am just a jail deputy. As just a jail deputy, I've worked in the courts, I've worked in the jails, I'm working recruiting right now. I'm a terrorism liaison officer, I'm a drug liaison officer, I'm on the peer support team, I've been on the gang intelligence team, and that's just as a deputy one. That's just as a jail deputy. And I look at my classmates, and they've been on, we've got bombs, SWAT, canines, narcs, working at our fusion center. They've worked in gangs. We've been Explorer advisors. We are mentoring as we are being mentored. I am an academy instructor for firearms. I teach the new recruits how to shoot. There's so much stuff we get to do as just deputy ones, and part of what it is, and I know this is how the people who've gone before us have shaped our department, and they are actively shaping our department so that young deputies like me, we get to go up and say, okay, if I only have 3.5 years on and I have so much richness in my career already, in my professional life, how much more is there out for me to get? How much more can I learn? How much more can I give back? And as I've been given to, as these people with experience and with greater wisdom than I have are pouring into me so I can serve better, how can I go on and pour into the people who come after me? And so as a fairly new person on the department, as a fairly new deputy sheriff, yes, we deal with bad, sad, awful, horrible things as part of our job, but there's also that great joy because we can see, look how much good we've done, and look how much we've helped, and look where we can go. And so right now, working on recruiting, for me, it's really fun because I get to shape the future of my department. And I don't see it as a problem to solve, but an opportunity. So who do I want to draw in to be part of this family?
And it goes in line with the first question, and when I talked about generation, and here's a great example of that, because that is awesome to hear that you've had all these opportunities, and you've done so much in that amount of time. I can tell you, I haven't been around a long time, but within almost 20 years of doing this line of work, back in the days where I started, that wasn't something that was a available to us. You had to, do your time for it, so to speak, and put in the effort, and put in the, whether it be time out on patrol or on the streets before you could even consider an assignment. So it goes back with the generation. It's a different generation. It's a generation that they're willing, they have the desire, they want to. And I think as the leaders in that organization, not just command staff or executive, but also the senior officers, they have so much influence on the up-and-comers that have so much to say with them. If you use that mentorship type of program, that's what they want. They want an opportunity. I know at the Santa Ana Police Department, in different ways, one being on our SWAT team, we do have a mentorship program. We do the best we can to develop the new officers and give them those opportunities that, looking back at it, even 15, 18, 20 years ago, we didn't really have those opportunities. And I think that's where we're going to see things grow. And if we adapt to this new generation and provide them with all these opportunities, I think you're going to see, like we mentioned before, a great outcome. So I think that's very, very important, whether it be formal or informal within the agencies and organizations.
Here at UCIPD, we're currently going through a transition. We started approximately maybe 2.5 years ago, and we're constantly going through it as well. We've lost a lot of our command staff and due to retirement, etc. So we're doing this right now, and I think that there's many areas, but two of the main areas we can touch upon. I think that would help with this, making this transition smoother. A is recruiting. I think that someone had mentioned earlier about recruiting having the right fit. I think I try to get on the oral boards, and I'm also on our recruiting team, other officers as well, so we can have a say as to who we're going to be coming in, who we're going to be working with, who we're going to be training, and someday even working for. So I think that has a lot to do with recruiting. And then also, secondly, when you do these transitions, if you can, and if you recruit properly, and you've mentored and done all the things that you hopefully have done, you could promote within. When you do that, that does such a great thing for the morale of the other officers who are left to say, you know what, I have an opportunity here. I don't have to look outward to try to do something. That's the main thing I'd say, recruiting morale. Now, there's others, but due to time, I'll just...
Thank you. Line level, thank you. Laurel, I got to tell you, as I heard you talking, and those of us that have been around for a minute, we're going, wow, we had to wait 10 or 15 years to do everything that you just said you've done in 3, and I commend you. I can't believe it. What a progressive organization. Thank you. Wow, that's impressive just to hear that. It really is.
This has been a presentation of the School of Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement at California Southern University.